This conference will now be recorded.
They're all blended right. They can hear me. James says he can hear me, but that's it. But my mic picks up faster than anybody else's. When you hear the printer not go anymore, go grab them. All right, so a while back we were looking at a proposal for annexation by the hospitals for some property that they would like to eventually develop into a new facility. But we ran into more questions than answers, I think is where we were at. So they wanted to go back with their lawyer, look at some more stuff, and that's pretty much where we're at. We haven't changed anything as far as staff report, correct, Forrest? Everything's still all
Correct.
same.
I've not made. Yep.
So most of our concern was water and time frame. I think was what we were running into. Did you find magic numbers?
I did. Numbers don't mean a lot to me.
That's the guy that they mean to the most. We have a hard copy. All of you guys. So you have to go. Oh, they're in order. Should be all the way to an annexation. If you'd like to. It's just current usage. So Eric's reading. So those are other facilities that are about approximately your overall goal
Yeah,
size.
you guys might recall Wayne Freeman, I think he was involved a little bit some time ago with our project. And they had a model that was built with Livingston Hospital. And used this formula.
Oh.
Toilets, square footage.
Alan, so that they can hear you, I have to have you go to the mic. Or you can grab the mic since we're not really formaling it.
I'm not sure I have anything more to say.
That's pretty much it.
That?
Sure.
For the not record.
Can you guys hear me? All right. You might recall some time ago we were working with Wayne Freeman, and they developed a model for the Livingston Hospital, which calculated the water need and the sewer flow for that hospital. It seemed to work pretty well, and so we submitted some detail to what we think the new hospital will look like, and those were the numbers that they came up with. And it might be important to kind of compare those numbers through that model with what we're currently using, because I would bet a new hospital, I'm just making up a number, might use 20% more water. That's what I would guess. And so we might be able to see if the model even works.
Eric, I have usage for all of 2022. Last 12 months. For the current hospital, so we can see. But the old one will still be in use, but we just don't know that it would be using the same amount. We would assume that it would still be using water. We'll steal a copy. You can chill that. It's been a while, maybe even 10 years. But take one, pass it on. Whole packet. Thanks. You can have it.
I have one of these too.
Uh-huh. I don't have anything. Oh. Mhm. So water was the other thing, and then I know the lawyers then went to talking. I don't know all of that.
Yeah, and then I think Nikki, our attorney, did draft a resolution of intent to annex. And I don't know if you guys have that. I didn't print it before I got it, but I have it electronically if you want me to send it. And I think that is actually where we left it is we have a draft resolution to the town, which I think had the language of the 5 years in there.
Ah, that's where we were at because we had unknown.
And I think what was important, I think, in that draft resolution to consider is it was important to us to find some land that was feasible to build a hospital on, and that I think it's 11.4 acres on Mountain View, sits right next to current city or town services. And so kind of as part of our due diligence, we actually have a purchase option on it. The owners of the property are Paul and Karen McMullen. And so part of our due diligence was to make sure that that was suitable for a future hospital, which it is, but kind of the last item is, is it possible to be annexed? Because if it's not possible to be annexed, it would be difficult to build, that big of a hospital without city sewer and water. The planning for that is not complete. We do know that we're completely out of space at the current hospital. We know we have a challenge of what we're going to do with the current hospital, but we can't really build up. We can't really expand. We don't have enough land. We don't have adequate parking. And 2 campuses are very challenging for a critical access hospital because if you get more than 250 feet away from literally two departments, then you can't get cost-based reimbursement for that. So normally in a critical access hospital, you have to have everything on one campus. It's just a CMS rule. So that does look like it would be very feasible. The timeline on it's a little bit uncertain at this point, but we'll get more certain. What's important for us is to know that we can get it annexed sometime in the future. We think that that's 5 years away. And then if we can, then we will exercise the purchase option and then buy it sometime in 2023.
Questions? He's doing math. That's where I'm at. I can tell.
So, I guess, how come for annexation, how come you need to be annexed in? Do you not have access on that property to put a well, or is it just easier?
According to our architects, it's too big of a structure for a septic tank and a well.
Okay.
Yep, there are some creative ways of doing it, but it's extremely expensive, and access to the town services is really, much more usual.
And the hospital owns no water rights to anywhere, and there's none on that property, correct?
That's my understanding.
The well was buried under the parking lot.
Oh.
On the current building?
Oh.
So you have no idea what that would eventually be? Or will you sell it, the old building?
It's a good question. The kind of the top possibilities are workforce housing, community center, assisted living, potentially a county building. We've talked We actually are starting a project now where some architects are doing a feasibility study on maybe the top 3 or 4 most practical and feasible alternatives. But it'll be a challenge. I think it'll be much more of a challenge than building a new hospital. But it will be important for us to do it because we are, unfortunately that building's only 12 years old, but I just, they probably did not plan on the growth that we've had.
Just makes me leery with the hospital currently using this much water and with the unknown of what the other building's gonna be. Makes me a little nervous.
Yep.
Alan, was that one of the big holdups last time? Was the fact that water was a variable?
Do you mean, Corey, in the last building of the hospital or where we are today?
Where we are today.
Yeah, I mean, I think this may be a little bit unusual because normally you have probably a very specific plan when you want to annex some property. And what we're really doing is making sure that we have that property before there's none available. Because as you guys know, it will be challenging in the future to get 10 or 12 acres in the very long-term future, at least in my mind. So we identified the property, we talked with the owners, we exercised a purchase option because we do believe that that is really maybe one of our only alternatives. But we do need to make sure that it can be annexed, we can get town services, and then we can move forward with some more specific planning.
And then this new building would have a surgical center in it as well.
It's very likely. Yep. We actually have a project that we're going to complete in June that will provide much more detail. We did this a few years ago, but we have the ability to literally look at the healthcare data analytics that identify everything all the healthcare services that are purchased in our primary and secondary service areas. So then we can compare that with what we provide today and then what we don't. And then we actually use this to determine our market share in the things that we do currently, and then identify those things that are feasible to do in the next hospital. And it will very likely be same day surgeries. In fact, without going to in much detail, unless you'd like me to, the challenge with a critical access hospital that mostly or only does primary care is, for the most part, primary care has a negative operating margin. And what that means is we spend more money than we make. And it doesn't really matter if you're a small critical access hospital or even a very large primary care center. That's why so many hospitals have purchased primary care because it has a negative operating margin. Even large hospitals lose money in primary care, but they make money in specialty care like cath labs, cancer treatment centers, the OR, things like that literally subsidize primary care. So if all you do is primary care, which is mostly what we do, literally the more you grow, the more you lose. And so we're at a point now that we're doing, I think, everything we can in the current building. We want to look, at least, it'll probably take us 5 years to go through the process of completing a hospital. And just to make it very clear, though, our board of directors has not made that decision yet. We have a good consulting project ahead of us where we'll be able to identify some more detail to that. So that needs to happen because right now it is just in the feasibility portion of our project. But it would be almost impossible for us to continue to grow in primary care without having a facility that can do some specialty services that can then start subsidizing that care. And that's a very normal transition from a smaller hospital like ours to something just a little bit bigger.
Like Anaconda.
Yeah,
They made
yep.
that transition.
Anaconda, Deer Lodge, Lewistown, those communities, at one time their hospital looked like ours. And yeah. So we have two challenges, and I know most of you are very familiar with this, but we have two challenges. One is our current space is not adequate. It's very difficult for a critical access hospital to have two campuses and then workforce housing. So the other thing that's very important for us long term is that the hospital campus will have workforce housing. And we use that for those currently for people who have a call responsibility who live out of the community. And we also use that for people who move here and need some time to transition to either buying or renting a place to live. And so without that, like today we own 2 triplexes. We own, 2 triplexes. We rent 3 apartments in 2 houses. And without that, we wouldn't have an ambulance service. We wouldn't have CT. We wouldn't have the lab. I mean, it's a big part of what we do. So a future hospital will very likely have some workforce housing.
What you're thinking now, is it 1 story?
Yes.
But it could potentially be.
Yep. Most of them are built so you can have a tower. Yep. And that's really the challenge of the current building is it wasn't built that way, and we wouldn't have enough parking anyway. Yeah, in the summer we have to get really creative with parking already.
Yeah.
The water estimate that's here, that doesn't take into account any potential additional housing.
Yeah, I think the numbers, if I recall, but I'm really not able to interpret it very well. I think it included 16 units of housing.
3-bedroom and a 2-bedroom workforce housing. 1 bedroom.
The 5 years, is that, maybe it was already discussed, but is that before anything would start? Or is that 5 years to complete the hospital?
We're sort of estimating 5 years because there's some work to do, some feasibility work to do to make sure that we understand what the next hospital needs to look like. We will have a consulting project that we will complete. We also do a community health needs assessment every 3 years, and we need that kind of information to figure out, what our next, what services we need to provide to the community. It literally takes about 1 year to complete financing with the USDA, and it takes about 18 months to build a hospital. And so some of it is fundraising, but mostly, being kind of sort of realistic, we believe it's 5 years.
5 years to completion or
To completion. Yep. But I want to make it just as clear as I can again, just for the record. The steps are finish our consulting project and that feasibility study, and literally our board of directors needs to make that decision still. We just know that this property is very important, that we need to secure it, and we also know that we can't stay in our current state we can't stay there indefinitely. And I think that was the challenge, Nikki, when we started this was normally, I'm assuming often when somebody wants to annex something, they have a pretty clear plan, they have a timeline, and they want to start maybe pretty quickly. And, ours is just a little bit different than that. Planning a hospital just takes longer.
Eric, are you still doing math?
Yes.
That's, that's roughly 4 times the amount of the current hospital.
Oh, with the numbers.
So maybe that model doesn't work that well. Let's see, because I don't think we'll use 4 times more. I'd be surprised.
How many days? And then this is monthly usage, so.
It's almost 4 times.
So it's about 3,000 gallons a day. That's what I get out of those numbers.
Eric, does that identify what just the workforce housing portion is? Maybe that's why. Yeah. Is the workforce housing identified separately? How much is that compared to the hospital?
On peak flow.
It's maybe 1,000.
So.
It's half.
No, it's not.
Okay.
As far as the work.
As opposed to 1 million. No, 16 million.
So I'm going by gallons per day,
Mhm.
right?
So that's the hospital, that's
That's peak
workforce
flow.
housing.
Right. So this
That seems like,
is what
It's like,
you,
when you look at theirs,
okay. Hmm.
I would bet their peak flow is gonna be the same.
That
These
almost
ones
looks
right
low
here.
then, doesn't it?
yeah,
That number compared to that.
it does.
You look-
So that looks like that's low and that seems maybe high. Maybe you have some thoughts on housing.
Is that the building of new workforce housing?
It
Okay,
is.
not
Yep.
considered.
So take this here number, just so you have it.
Mhm.
So you know.
I need to know. What's this to these? Why is this so much different? You see what I'm saying?
Summertime.
But this is,
October.
Reading on May 19th.
and then July we go up.
They got the sprinklers.
Oh,
Irrigation.
why do I never think about irrigation?
No lawn.
They don't have that big of a lawn. It's relatively small.
They probably overwater.
Yeah, probably. Probably.
Salt gets it.
Why would October be so
Past
hot?
year ends up to just, million,
Well,
92.
October reading is from 30 days prior to that date.
This
So it's
Uh,
still in summer.
we're at
Oh,
13,000
right.
gallons.
And it
And
was
if you
warm
remember
last year.
September, it was beautiful. It was sunny, it was gorgeous, I loved it.
July it goes up to
They need to give us realistic annual.
September and back. October's really back down. Yeah. Which makes sense. Yeah. It is a really low.
Susie, do you remember what average gallons per day for a household? A day?
A month.
Okay, I was like, a day? I don't use 2,000 gallons a day, do I? Some people have bigger hot water.
I got one shower.
Okay, so average house is where you said for two?
Hello.
Hi, James.
Hello, good evening, everyone. It's James Greenbaum, your town attorney. I'm currently on vacation here. As you can tell, I'm just in front of the Eiffel Tower.
Are you in
By-
Las Vegas, France?
If you believe that, I've got you a bridge to sell. As far as the calculations go for the water flow and all that stuff, the applicant has to come up with that from an engineer. I mean, they need to come in with an actual proposal of what it is exactly they're building. Their engineers should be able to give you those calculations. So for you, I'm just chiming in here because I just don't want to see you spending more time than necessary trying to, extrapolate or compute from, existing data. It's really not relevant. I mean, two important things that we know from the last public meetings with Great West Engineering is number one, you have the capacity to handle water and sewer treatment. However, there are legislative changes coming about, so we don't know if you are going to be in full conformity with that or not. But currently, today, you do conform and you do have capacity for water and sewer treatment, and you're at 60% out of 100% capacity for water and sewer treatment. That's part of it. The second part of it is your supply. Your water supply, according to Great Western, is at 50% of where it should be. That's a fundamental problem that any annexation that you proceed with must take into account that you don't have the water supply. You have the treatment. On the treatment side, you're good, but on the supply side, you're not. All right. No, unfortunately, I mean, Forrest is still there, and I expect, and hopefully he'll chime in here. I know he's listening in. There he is. There's the dude, you know, and, you know, Forrest does an incredible job for the town of Ennis, and I'm certain he does the same for his other clients. But what we have to consider here is that we don't have the supply for this annexation. So for you to sit there and pontificate on what it might be, it's like, that doesn't even matter. We don't have the supply. They have to provide the supply. There's no way that the town of Ennis can allow any annexation because you don't have the supply at this point. So anyone who wants to annex into the town is doing so because for them to create their own sewer treatment facility might be cost prohibitive. So just like on your piece of paper in front of you, just jot down the supply is one part of it and treatment is the other part of it. All right. We have the treatment capacity, but we don't have the supply. They need to provide the supply. They need to put that in writing. They need to have the engineering that supports that. We don't have to calculate that. You guys don't need to spend any more time tonight talking about what other hospitals are doing, what the average consumption is for another household. That's their responsibility. If they want to annex in, if they want to gain our treatment facility, they can't do it in any other fashion than to tell us what their supply is going to be and how much treatment they are going to require. Okay? That's the basic, that's the fundamental part of this process. Now, as far as their conditional sales contract, the town doesn't, we don't have a stake in that. They could create whatever terms and conditions they want to. That's a private contract. It does not concern the town. All right. And then finally, I'm a little bit disappointed that Jennifer Favre isn't there, their attorney. All right. And I only say that because, and I understand this is a work session, but a corporation can only be represented by counsel. But this is a work session, so, you know, I'm not going to belabor that issue. Forrest, do you have anything else that you'd like to contribute?
Not too much. I mean, I think James really hit the nail on the head. You can't serve a building, a development, if you don't have capacity and the ability to serve it. So I think what you're talking about, if you have the treatment capacity, it sounds like you do, then you're really talking about supply, and that is something you can put on the developer. What is their proposal to make sure that there's adequate supply for their development? Whether it's you've talked about water rights, whether or not they can secure a water right for the town to increase supply or provide another means for the town to get the supply that's necessary to service their development. But that's on the developer. So that's something you can require that they prepare, they come up with a proposal and then bring it to the town, and James, and your public works people and your engineers can look at that and evaluate that. But James is right. It's really out of the city's purview, the town's purview to discuss what may or may not happen at the other building, or how that might be used, because you're really focused on whether or not you can service this development, this proposed annexation, and whether that's in the best interest of the town.
Eric, question.
Yes.
The well that is not developed at the rodeo grounds, do you remember gallons per minute that it produces?
Roughly
Okay. We do not, we were going to wait and secure funding for that. Right. That would be my in between. That's what makes sense to me. Was money towards that development. And then, because I don't know where else, there's nowhere on that water or where they're trying to build that there's a well or that you could have a municipal well. You could say go ahead and find a well, but we're having fun with that too. That one would, they're saying peak flow 31.25 gallons per minute. If that well produced 100 gallons a minute, then we would still be adding to our overall.
One thing you could discuss is if you have an undeveloped well that you're looking for funding to develop, if that well needs to be online in order to provide adequate service for this development, you may be able to come to an agreement to cost share that with the applicant.
That's what I was thinking. Like overall, that would be serve both parties, and it would have the capacity for the new facility, and then still give us some. We're still going to be looking for another one, but so
yeah, you're going to want to be sure. You're going to want to be assured that bringing that new well online is going to be able to adequately serve this development. I guess that's the only caveat I would throw out there. Is if you're going to cost share it, you want to make sure that once that is online, you can take care of this development.
So you got pretty much run their water bottles with that.
So that's what I mean. Before we had another public hearing and go through the we don't know, I wanted to get this stuff lined out that made sense. So I think that's the next step, is to actually get what we think we're going to use from you, what the hospital is willing to do for cost share, and if that well is adequate for that annexation plus some to the town itself. Does that make sense? Okay.
I was under the impression that we were maybe not gonna just do away with that and look for other.
We've been looking, and at least we have this one. And it's what Joel was saying that got me was the paperwork portion of it, how much it takes to clear a well. Because Eric and I went and looked at other ones that, well, another well this week, and that's the next thing is like, how much can you spend just getting through the paperwork process to get another well that produces about 120? So,
Also, you have to look at.
and that one's
Getting
good.
it to production. It's really close.
This
Yeah.
one is?
The well we
Yeah.
have now is close to our water. It wouldn't be.
But it's just not, it doesn't produce enough, so.
Her
how is that?
overall 10-year, they were looking at 340 gallons a minute for flow. That one only gets us another 100, so we're still gonna have to find another if we're gonna keep growing. So it might be the point where this gets us through this and our reserve, and we can't grow anymore until we secure more. That's, I think, how this process is gonna be right now.
So, but didn't they say that going further, I don't know my directions, towards the new site, north would be, right, north 40, would be better options for a potential well, theoretically? They don't know until they drill, but they think that that would be a good
That
option.
water, you cross that road and that water is historically warm. So you actually can't use that for a public water.
That's why they were thinking about it for the aquatic center,
A lot of
because,
geothermal.
yeah,
Oh,
And it's stinky.
And-
The fire department had to have a system to make it
not.
not gross.
You have the hottest hot spring in Montana right across the road.
So when you go north, it's not okay. We have to, our best bet is to find something south. So I think that's the next step, is actual demand, and then getting with Great West and an engineer from you and what the hospital is willing to do for that share. and then drafting that into part of the resolution for annexation. So that it's, does that make sense?
No, I'm good. I think, so maybe what I'm hearing though is that these numbers that Wayne Freeman's group did,
So
they,
those are daily, okay, that's monthly.
okay,
Your daily use by that paper, you get
I mean, but you can,
roughly your winter time use.
if another hospital of the same size is up and running, it should be very easy to call up their public works department and get the same sheet that we have and have some pretty darn close numbers.
The consultants are experts with all of this. They should know how to be able to calculate this information. or gather
Well,
it.
it's just in two different formats and that's part of it,
well,
but.
they did. That is what they did.
Mhm.
And whether it's accurate or not, I wouldn't have any way to compare. And Nikki, I agree with you. There are actually several hospitals almost exactly our size, so at least it's more reference points. Glad you
Yeah.
said that. And we did as a hospital assume that it would be challenging for the town to supply water, so we did expect that there'd be some, that would be part of the cost of building, would be to help with that water.
Okay.
But just so I can understand it, next steps then would be trying to get more information. I don't know if it would be better, but at least have more to compare to. Then the next step after that would be to complete the resolution of the intent to annex.
Kind of have the lawyers talk back and forth and with Eric and I and the Mitch to try and figure out what that share portion would be and then and then it's presented and see if the council agrees with that share portion and the rest of the annexation.
But again, it's kind of hard to run numbers on something you don't know.
Yeah.
That's the biggest. You could say, oh, well, it's gonna be this. But how do you know,
So you give yourself room.
Yeah, maybe we agree on a certain percentage.
Yeah.
There we go. Does that sound like a plan? So I can get rid of this old one and go from there?
Do you guys have, so Maria said earlier, you have a well that's paved over on the existing hospital property? Is that?
I didn't know that. So
It's down, where the old, the old clinic, it was in the basement. So it's sub, parking
obviously
lot.
the hospital and nursing home.
There was the hospital and then the old clinic was north of that. And the well was in the basement on the north end of the clinic. And that all got filled in and paved over.
Would that be viable for the town at some point in time?
Not as a developed well because of the distance it's not 100 feet from a road, from distance wise.
Nowhere on there, or just can't keep moving?
If I could do that, we'd be okay.
Nikki,
I don't know if there's anybody still living that could pinpoint any closer.
Huh.
I only know that because Sandra Bullock's husband called my husband to say, where was that well? And they're all gone.
James,
Mayor.
go ahead.
yes. I'm recognized. I can speak. So,
Yes.
all right. So the supply issue is twofold from two different perspectives. And I just want to explain this, that the supply issue is there's two prongs to the supply issue. Number one, the hospital itself has to be capable of providing whatever water supply that they require for themselves, right? We don't need to calculate that for them. They need to figure that out because, I mean, they don't want to be in a situation where, oh, we don't have sufficient water supply. We can't, do whatever we need to flush toilets or, hose down, whatever. They need to figure out what their water supply needs are. When they come up with that calculation based on their engineering, they then present that data to us, to the town. Then the second prong of the analysis is, do we have sufficient capacity to treat that water supply? This is not rocket science, folks. This is very basic. It's very basic fundamentals. We don't have to stress, as far as the town goes, we don't have to stress ourselves about this. There's no way. How can you build a hospital and not know what your water supply needs are? All right. So when they calculate that with their engineers, they're going to present that data to the town, and then we're going to look at it and say, okay, we can handle that, or we can't. I mean, that's it. It's simple. Forrest, please.
But I think we have a plan to address both parts of needs, and we'll go from there. All right. So I think that is the plan. Some more numbers and some write up on. All right.
I think I got it.
Okay.
There you go.
And then if you have copies of our water report, I'll email it to you. It's in draft because we haven't adopted how we're paying for things. But then that gives us, so you guys know where we're at. Okay? So I should tell myself to do that later. All right, I'll email you that. Okay? And then just keep in touch with me and we'll figure out who needs to be where when.
And every little thing is gonna be all right. Don't worry.
Will you resend me the changed resolution though, so I can look at it again? I'm sure I have it somewhere deep, but I looked the other day and I couldn't find it, so I put it somewhere great where I wasn't gonna lose it. Susie has it probably somewhere.
Got it right here. It's on its way.
Okay, sounds good. Perfect. Thank you.
Hey, before you guys adjourn, I just want to point out that, the resolution that I drafted, and for some reason, I don't know why some of this information was like deleted in the draft that was submitted recently, but I put in there that all flow rates would be subject to engineering reports and requirements, that they would have to provide a time for completion, that DEQ approvals would be required. And I don't know why some of that information was all deleted from this last draft. So, again, I would say that we've got to go back and look at this resolution, and instead of perhaps saying that, the recommendations from Forest Mandeville are incorporated by reference, I would like to see those actually stated right in the resolution. Okay. Along with my previous recommendations, which were unfortunately deleted.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that was pointed out too, because if we're talking a 5-year completion timeline, I believe in my staff report, I recommended 2 years. So if you're going to change anything from the staff report, you're going to want to make sure that's memorialized somewhere. So I think if you put that, you can copy and paste the staff report right into the resolution as much as you agree or disagree. But we want to make sure that if it is referenced, that those marry up very well. So I think, like James mentioned, just taking those points one by one and incorporating them into that resolution is a good idea.
This road could look a lot different in 5 years. So they have to, everybody that follows you guys has to have a path, a map.
And then- All right, I think we're there,
All
at
right,
least
thanks everyone. Should we
closer. Thank you.
try to follow up in the next couple of weeks or month or just?
Yeah. Contact me and then we'll probably do staff and get Colette down and then go from there. Roll.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
I have a question. We're on number 4, item 4 of the agenda. Did I miss 1 through 3?
No,
I know
We started with 4.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's what I said earlier.
figured that was the only one that somebody was gonna be waiting, but you guys are waiting. What did they say? Mary resolution with forests.
State all the recommendations in the
Bless you.
Report. All right, Forrest, I think that's all the excitement for you for the night.
All right, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Night.
Thanks.
Only 2 more weeks. Good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
Unless they delay it again. All right. I don't even know where the rest of the stuff is. I should have thought of that ahead of time, but we also pay for us to be online, so I think I figured I'd bump him to where he's not sitting through the rest of it. That was where it's at. All right. Now back to the regular part. It's too many. Okay. So, remember marijuana way back when? No. Greg's like, no. I don't remember marijuana.
Are we doing like roll call the pledge or anything like that? So we don't have to?
We don't, actually
Okay,
don't have
okay.
to.
I figured. It's on there, so I didn't know, but okay. 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 Yes, let me pull it up.
So, when we adopted county ordinance, it changed basically the business license portion of marijuana distribution. Remember that?
Because it's, but now it's medical.
But in the rest of the zoning, we still have the word medical, so it's just weird.
doesn't conform.
It doesn't conform with the other. So basically, we would just like to amend the ordinance to exclude the word medical from the rest of the town code.
It doesn't mean you're excluding medical marijuana.
No.
You're just taking the word out of the ordinance.
What is
It is water.
that? Okay. So we're all good with that. That was the whole purpose, because even if you, by the zoning, it's not going to change, or by the way the ordinance itself is written, it doesn't change the ability for location based on distance from schools, parks, libraries, churches, all those things.
Doesn't change any of that.
Doesn't change anything, just gets it so that the whole thing is consistent with each other. Okay? So it's not like top priority in our little legislative awesomeness.
But what do we have to do?
We just have to do an amendment to strike the word medical
From
from
all of
all
them.
town code. But we'd have to go through public hearing because we're getting rid of that word in most of Susie's section. Is where it pops up, where you're like, oh. But then there's discrepancy, so we just like to make it consistent. No objections?
Nope.
Okay. Carry on with that. So we already did the resolution and wording for no parking. And the findings of facts that supported that. James just left because he
Did he really leave?
I think he did.
I think that was kind of,
James?
Yeah, is James still here?
James the thing.
Oh, I'm like, James still there?
I
Okay.
understand he's our attorney, but that was kind of rude the way he just treated.
Alan?
Yes.
I'm,
I don't-
what's going on?
Okay, I'm just making
We
sure.
just approved the hospital.
You approved the, yeah, right. Okay. All right. And Maria, the responsibility is all on you now.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay, so. I need that one. Where's the no parking folder?
For.
Did you have a question for me? Did you have a question for me?
I forgot what it was. Trying to find you.
Oh.
Is this for North 40? No parking?
Yes,
Okay.
remember?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what do we have to do?
Still have to go through ordinance process, but we're all okay with that. I would like to make that one of the top priorities simply because we run into more issues with it during the summer than any other time of the year.
Mhm.
Okay?
Mhm.
Craig, I will get you the resolution that they voted on and the supporting findings of facts. Because there was pictures and stuff, and basically we took measurements and said a fire truck will not fit if we have cars parked here. So.
And are people still parking there?
Mhm. Because we didn't pass ordinance. We passed a resolution. So get Craig the resolution and the findings of facts. Okay, snow removal won't be hot on the list. It'll be the last one, but we pretty much we already did resolution for it as well. Craig, were you here for that one yet?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
You just can't put it in the middle of right of way, because that's state highway or somebody else's property.
Okay.
I was here.
And we
I
already
was here
had the
for that.
resolution done for that one. James, when you repeal and replace, do you have to do resolution for it?
You need to do, it's an ordinance amendment, so you have to go through the same public hearing process.
Well, public hearing, but I'm on to the camping ordinance. Do we
Yes.
need to do a resolution to repeal and replace and then go through public hearing?
It's basically the same thing. I mean,
Okay.
right now you're in a work session, so you don't have the ability to take any action because you're in a work session.
Correct. I'm just asking you, do we need to write a resolution to proceed with repealing and replacing camping?
Yes,
Okay, I need you to write an ordinance to repeal and replace camping ordinance then.
I'll get on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, it goes from one place to another. We're missing a section of the original format that James wrote.
How does that happen though?
Because we play telephone with documents and that's what happens sometimes. So I was looking at one of the ones that Eric sent me, one of the towns, and they changed, on the back of our format, we have who voted, and then it's a clerk's signature, and then the mayor's signature for the final document. In one of the water restrictions, they have the attorney as well as to content and form complete. So I think we're going to try and add that to all of ours. So it's not complete unless all of us know that it was correct. Just an extra check to make sure that we're not missing anything and having to redo it again a year later, painfully. Okay. So James, will you write the resolution and then send us the original in its entirety that we're replacing the current one?
Yes, I will do that. And the good news is that, substantially what you have in place is effective and can be enforced. If there were just some provisions that were missing, I'm not sure why that occurred. I did send in the final revised version. It just somehow didn't get on your agenda or did not get to Sterling
Codifier.
codifiers, you know.
Okay. So I'll find that one and then we'll add that. I guess we're there in its work session, Karina.
Say what?
While we're kind of on that one in its work session, Lions Club, super opposed to that area being down at the Lions Club, the camping area.
We're not, yeah, super opposed. I would get it.
Super opposed. So when bicyclists, 17 of them are approved for overnighter at the 3rd, they can't do it.
Come again?
So when the Lions Club would like to approve cyclists to stay at the park, they cannot do that.
I think there's a difference between someone who has a $5,000 bicycle and someone who's homeless. In the quality.
We don't discriminate in the ordinance. You don't say, well, because you own a $5,000 bike, you can camp wherever you want. It is.
One night versus.
And like Corey said, where they do in Twin, they take a picture of them with the bike and a little ID, send it to the clerk, and they're like, okay, you're issued. They have an actual shower there and storage or a place. And that's how they do a permit. And I don't see how it would be any. I think we should really look at the ordinance so that you understand that it wasn't. The whole idea was that you need to know who's there. So you get a permit, it's free.
The super opposed part of it was when Officer Moore was concerned about what's coming down the pike from California and the homeless, thousands of homeless setting up indefinite camps.
From Bozeman.
We didn't want, well, it is in Bozeman now. We didn't want that being in the park.
And that's why we
And
wrote.
I get that we can't discriminate. I hear you.
And that's why we wrote the ordinance. And if you read how the ordinance is written, because the district court, no, which one? Ninth Circuit Court ruled that you have to provide sleeping area. So ours was very specifically 8 hours of stay only with permit. And responsible and then prohibited from doing X, Y, and Z. So
for someone traveling through that was homeless has to go through the same criteria?
Mm-hmm. They have to provide permit. They have to come get a permit that says you can stay there the night. The permit's good for 3 days. After that, you have to come back and get it again. But you are only allowed to be there between this time at night and this time, and your stuff can't stay there. So that there's no way for permanent residents to be established.
And who's monitoring it?
That's why either one of them, our town property, can be done.
Say that again?
That's why with it being either one of the town properties, it can be done.
Police department.
Yeah, the town.
So the town officer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, because it's town ordinance. I don't know what the right answer is there, but it's.
I don't know what the right answer is. Yeah.
But you can't get it to the point where you're discriminating, saying like
wanna-
rainbow people,
yeah, I don't
you
wanna sound
can't go
snotty.
there.
Yeah, I don't want
But
it to sound snotty
since
and-
they have bikes, they can.
No,
They can't.
No, and that sounds super snotty. That's not what I do.
Mhm.
The permanent.
If you're going to speak from the gallery of the audience there, yes, thank you.
Yes, having a permanent homeless village is not the vision that we have.
Right.
Adding some criteria for getting a permit, and that is being enforced across the board. I think I could go to the Lions at the board and explain that. We have a board meeting next week, so it would be a pretty quick turnaround to make sure that everybody's agrees with me. I can't speak for the entire 62 members of our Lions Club.
Okay.
It's on Wednesday, right?
It is, the first Wednesday is the board meeting, the second Wednesdays is the general meetings.
Okay.
This isn't on, so that's not gonna help them much.
That's what I was, but he's happy you're standing up there.
Well,
As long as he's happy.
Not doing it, I don't even know where I'm just.
Well, it's just that that's what came up. There's been a group that's stayed at the Lions Club year after year and they've approved it. They've already agreed to that. Now we're like, well, you can't by the ordinance that was passed last year legally do that.
Right. Oh, I get it. We have bicyclists coming in. It's like normal.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a normal group that's done it year after year. And we have to be consistent. Yep, I get it.
So Corey and I both looked and saw like, what can we do? Is it an event at that point? Can you do an event permit? I don't know. Because it
Oh, that's
still
an idea.
says no overnight camping.
Oh, yeah, overnight.
And it seems very, to be fair to everybody, it says no overnight camping. It's always said overnight camping. I was never aware that had ever been a group camping there overnight. But I've seen like the cyclists do it at the school on the lawn there too. But that's a huge group. Cycle America that does it.
Mm-hmm.
What about a camp spot across the river?
Cost some money. I don't know.
That's
Why can they afford a $5,000 bike and not a $2 camping spot? I'm not sure. But, yeah, I don't.
They might. We brought in porta potties.
But that was the whole.
When is this?
July 3rd.
Wow, terrible.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah,
that's why
so-
when we were originally forming the ordinance, we're like, okay, we'd looked at that area specifically because it still had a bathroom. Still meet those requirements as long as they were permitted. And we had the ability to add surveillance to it, to that specific area, so that there was always access visually for the officers.
We were on that page too. We didn't want it to go to the Lions Club. I didn't think that would be appropriate with kids. And we didn't want to.
You don't, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. It's.
So then that other option is the 17 come hang out up here. It's a very small 17 lot.
I don't think they would be opposed to it.
So that's the next thing. No, they want it for free because they're going
Well,
to
what
cross
about the
country.
golf course? Let's complicate the golf course.
So maybe that's the thing.
Excuse me all, I'm going to chime in here for a second. Your town code, section 85-2B states, second sentence in that paragraph, no individual shall be allowed to camp either in a motor vehicle, tent, or sleeping gear anywhere in the Lions Park area. That's your town code. So I don't even know why that's a discussion at this point.
Here, got it. Okay. I will have it on the agenda for the Lions, let them know, and let them know they have an option for being up here.
Okay.
Is that what I hear?
Yep. And
Okay.
And there's no charge up here either. So
Okay.
it's,
Got it. Got it. Works for me.
You have to go to the
Could you,
mic.
yeah.
oh,
Or you
what
could,
are you? Here.
Or a private entity like a church here in town to host a group coming through, where they would be sleeping inside the church. Is that an issue? Okay. Thank you.
Will they have a shower available? Indoor. They're gonna need a shower. Just saying. I mean,
Okay,
it's bad.
watering restrictions. Eric, give us the lowdown.
I thought we did this last meeting.
I said, have you read the information? Do you have any questions or comments? And the council replied, I have not reviewed those for the most part.
Oh.
Because the water main had broken and Eric hadn't gotten it. We hadn't seen that draft.
They
I
were
do
all in your packet for the last meeting.
I recall seeing them and
So just go with
You
whatever Eric's
do?
recommendations are.
yeah, they looked fine.
Okay.
I mean,
You know, and I'm open to discussion.
Yeah, at the last meeting, it was.
Yeah.
We'd like to propose something. And this might be what's in it. But it wasn't, there wasn't anything drafted. That was.
I thought we.
there was the
did talk
email,
about it. I
the
don't
sprinkling
recall.
exemptions and I,
There was a lot of information on what other cities are doing or areas are doing and how they're handling it. And then Nikki, you had some exemptions that you had sent out.
So there was no, yes, we like this one, no, we don't like this one.
okay. So go to last month's meeting, or earlier this month's meeting.
Eric, was this the one you're, does that look familiar?
Sure.
Okay.
You want to keep it super simple, they have a whole bunch in some of the
I
ones.
don't think we need to get too complicated about it, you know. As far as water restrictions.
Okay.
So the stuff that's handwritten on the form, even numbered address, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, that's, would all be in place, yeah. 8 a.m.,
Oh, there.
10 a.m., 8 p.m., yeah.
So we're going with the
Even,
handwritten.
odd,
It
public,
was-
no watering from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Yeah, I've actually lived like that before. It's easy.
Okay.
And they didn't mess around.
And this is permanent, no
10:01.
drought.
Literally, they pulled up one time. I mean, it was literally 2 minutes out.
Oh, no, so that is permanent.
Permanent.
But again, the tier system would make it flexible.
At stage one, we just go like we go
Oh.
normal. When our peak daily demand is more than 80%, then
This goes into effect.
yes.
Okay.
Then we have voluntary. And then when we're at stage 3, then we go to the designated days.
Okay.
And then if it gets real bad, you don't get water.
At all. Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask any zoning that we do, what do you have, you're competent that we can enforce these rules, or you have a plan for enforcing them?
Cut them off.
I do have a question. I know like previously for me, we could water by hand. Like it was specific, no car washing. You couldn't use a sprinkler system, but you could water by hand. Like
if you have a garden.
If you have a garden or if you have flowers or that kind of thing. You just, yeah, it was pretty specific to that.
I
But
guess.
no car washing, no washing down. I mean, it's a little different here, obviously, but no washing down your driveway. No, you couldn't use.
Yeah, I guess hand watering would could be added into
Yeah,
the,
hand watering only.
to the, you know, yeah.
Or like-
Automatic systems.
Right, exactly.
Is that why you see little old ladies out watering their own lawn?
Well,
That's a lot of work.
I mean, some
I
do. I don't know.
Here?
Not
Oh, okay. I was like-
oh, like in other areas,
in
yeah.
other areas. I mean, like, why would you do that?
I don't know.
Maybe drip systems. It's sprinkler systems that are really wasteful.
That's what I was gonna say, drip lines maybe should be incorporated into that too, but
It is.
I'm sure you're not gonna be looking that close.
Drip, I think drips is on that paper there. Right?
Scrolling up to the first page.
I hadn't thought about the car
Yes,
wash.
drip irrigation for waters.
Yeah. And I guess you could add hand watering also with a positive shut off, being a nozzle that actually shuts off.
Who's that?
James, can you help me put the watering restrictions together? So watering, no camping, and no park, or not no camping, camping will be the three to get done first, because those are our summer issues.
So, okay, send me the details of the, tomorrow, just send me like the basic outline of what you want as far as your water restrictions.
Okay. And you guys said add drip systems or they're
Drip
in there?
systems on there, but
Hand water.
hand watering and car wash, I'll probably put something into that. Or
No
washing
car washing?
during tier 3, maybe,
Okay.
right?
No car
Or
wash.
2 even, maybe, I don't know. 3.
I got the audio, I can't get the video now. I want to see who's talking.
No car wash tier 3.
No.
SOMR, who is that? Or
And
they
then-
just-
He's a resident, he's a part-time resident.
Okay, so, from what I heard is something to the extent that you want to restrict watering during the summertime. So we need to define, what those, from what date to what date, and then, exactly what you're restricting. And maybe no washing cars, no irrigation whatsoever. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a difficult thing to regulate, because you could say, alternate days of irrigation or no irrigation, but how do you regulate how much water they're actually irrigating with?
All right, James, we have other towns and the highlights that Eric have kind of fit us. So I will send those to you and build it to kind of fit town needs, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I'm gonna have to have you write the resolution for that one.
Yes, no problem. Thank you.
So you need me to come up with dates also then? I can do this.
Yes, recommendations on dates, because you're gonna know our peak days or peak times.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next one, short-term rentals.
Yeah. What did the legislature say? Are they done yet?
They did not put any stipulations on it. So. straight
None
for
at
this.
all, none, zero, nothing? So we're still in, municipalities are still.
They tabled it, so they didn't put any, they didn't tie any municipalities' hands. So they're still giving municipalities the right to choose.
Let's
what
roll.
fits. So, wait, Miss, we want to roll? First and foremost, why are you capping it? Why is the suggested cap?
To control housing for full-time people, for our workforce, long-term people.
Is that a theory or a fact?
Well, we have to find the facts.
She's talking to you. See, I'm leading questions. That's what I'm doing. So if there are 6 business licenses, what would lead a municipality to cap?
The fact that we know that there's more and the other ones are not paying or
Not
getting a
purchasing.
license.
So I think it would be smart to start this process by chips and salsa pairs. I'm saying beer, whatever you guys want to do, in pairs, and hunt down how many are within city limits.
Okay.
Because there's no point in putting a cap on a number when you don't know what the number that actually exists.
But even
is.
Great West said there's at least 40.
No,
West
it was
said-
not Great West. It was Cushing Terrell said
Okay.
40, and we followed up and they said, we just took a stab at it. We don't actually know. We followed up. They don't know. Nobody knows. We've called the sanitarian office to get an exact number. There's not.
Okay.
So that's the first step is if you don't know how many you have, how can you put a cap number on it as a percentage when you know?
You can't enforce it because you don't know where you are.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll just back it
So
up.
chips and salsa.
Okay.
And then I reviewed twins again. I don't think it will hold up in court ever.
Ours?
That is, if you try and copy twins, twin is small enough. I don't think anybody's challenged it yet. You give it a couple years and that will end up in court. And I do not think it will hold. I really think if we're going to do it, you look at Bozeman, they spent 3 years looking at it. 3-year study on short-term rentals. And then they very specifically did it by zoning. I looked at Rock Springs. They did theirs by zoning. They took certain sections, like green section was allowed X amount of percentage. Yellow was allowed a certain percentage. And then red was restricted. It was like the older, more traditional part of town. So they said as a group that they wanted that off limits to short-term rentals. That's how they did it. There's lots of different ways to do it, but they've all done it through zoning. They all knew exactly what they had. They had an ability to track them. And what they're noticing with the cap numbers is then it becomes an auction of I'm going to grab that license and I'm going to hold it and then I'm going to basically sell it and auction it. So I don't think it's the right answer. And if we're going to do it, instead of punishing, maybe we look at a more creative solution that's incentivizing. And I don't know what that is yet, but I've noticed that when, after going to conference, when municipalities start punishing to get what they want, it costs the taxpayers more at the end of the day. With all the blight ordinances that I looked at, when they went to enforce it, that's a lot in legal fees, and it was actually more than the cost of, like, did you ask, you just do an incentive? And none of them said, oh, that's a good idea. They were like, I never thought of it. So instead of punishing, how do you make it?
How could we legally make it a reward? Like you can't give them a break on taxes or like, how can you do that? Discount on water rates? Like
if you own 2, maybe your second business license is, or if you have a long-term rental, your short-term business rental is at a discounted price. Or, I mean, there's options to do it, especially where there's some that I know of that have multiple, at least that way, maybe that incentive's like, well, I'll make it up in another way. I don't know. We can think outside the box. That's the thing that I'm thinking.
Right, and Big Sky would be your, they have the best of everything up there. They have more money than sense, quite literally. So you can look at how they've purchased deeds to houses and have actually made it that you can not charge more than X number of dollars for rent. This is creating affordable housing, is what they've done. And they've done that with resort tax dollars. So until we're trying to control a market is what ultimately what we're trying to do. Twin Bridges actually has someone, the mayor just spoke of, that is like, well, I have a short-term rental license. I'm just going to hold on to it. I haven't built it yet, but I'm just going to keep that license in perpetuity, maybe, because you're creating a commodity when you only have a set number of these things. And it's super tough. You have to identify identify the problem. And one of my favorite examples is an example I heard earlier this year when someone comes into town, they purchase a house, and it's might be house number 10. But they have one here in Ennis for the 4th of July parade. And then they can VRBO it out for the rest of the year. So they don't own 10 homes because they're bad business individuals. It's because they're very smart business individuals, and they can choose to live all over the United States if they utilize the VRBO or the short-term rental market, because it affords a pretty penny. So yeah, it's.
So this is my proposed action for that at this moment, is make friends, buddy up, we take it in pairs, and we should see how many we can find. Because the other thing that I found, and I have probably about 80 articles stored up in my short-term rental file right now. And it's been interesting as I watched all around the country, things that I didn't expect. There's actually really great numbers of, like governments that or municipalities that did put caps, and they noticed it mostly during the NFL this year, is when Airbnb the app started running all of its statistics and said that municipalities that actually had governance and restrictions, those Airbnbs were more stable financially over a 4-year period than the municipalities that didn't. And I cannot tell you why that is. And I couldn't find any data on why it is, but I thought it was weird data, not what I would expect. So for some reason, having the rules actually stabilized the market in those towns. So I'm still digging as to why, like what specific things they did that made those markets stable. Because there was people that were on Airbnb that had them in different locations, different cities, and they could tell you which one was more productive based on rules. I thought that was interesting. But we have to remember the first priority of government is public health and safety. And while we really recognize that through business license, that's what we were trying to achieve, but that was the ultimate goal, because they're starting to see like these are also used for more illegal things than we would like to admit to. This is where the abductions go to. Canada just had one where 4 girls were hanging out in theirs, and they found video cameras in the plugins directed to the shower. There's a reason that we want to have the business license. And I know everybody thinks it's always about the money, but it's about the ability to regulate and keep people safe. And if we don't know where they are and they don't want to participate, our only ability at this point, we've already written the ordinance, you need to have a business license for it, is to start tracking them down in a little bit of enforcement, and that will give us the base to know if we need more. So I will compile my folder, send it to you guys for lots of random reading. I've pulled in Kalispell, Whitefish, Colorado, California, Florida. It's been quite the morning read.
You probably don't know this. I don't know. Would I reach out to Ginger or Maria? Like the Rainbow Valley Lodge, when they advertise all theirs, is that still technically a short-term rental, right? But is it licensed? Does he have a license because it's in town?
Rainbow Valley already has a license for operations that would fall under that.
And hotels, I don't know how this would apply to that, to this scenario. But hotels, motels, lodges are excluded in the definition of short-term rental.
Yeah. So they pay their business license based on the definition of hotel, not short-term.
Well, but I don't know that, because I know that owners contract with the Rainbow
Right,
Valley
they
Lodge
manage
to
it
rent
for
out
them.
their properties. So is there a division there, or is it an extension of the hotel or motel? I don't know.
Because they're different premises, I would think
Yeah.
it would be.
Offsite.
Yeah.
There's no other business that owns multiple locations in town, is there? That I can think of. I mean, there's owners that have multiple, like Heckler, and he holds a business license for each location. Yeah. So it would be based on location. I mean, if you're going consistently, it would be them.
For short-term?
No, I'm
No,
talking about
not short-term.
Oh.
regular general.
It's just talking about is multiple commercial businesses.
But I feel like if you have two of them, each one doesn't need one. You're acting as, it's mostly identifying the two, right? Maybe we need to clarify it.
Wouldn't it be EIN numbers if you have two separate businesses that pay separate tax?
Madison Valley Property Management has a business license. They manage multiple short-term rentals. Each one of them has to be licensed because they're owned by a different entity. So I don't know why it wouldn't be any different for Rainbow Valley.
Right. Yeah.
I know they manage it for Mary Oliver and that triplex or duplex or something that's back there by the cemetery. I don't know how many others. We need to brainstorm and identify that, and then I can start tracking them down.
You want to come to cocktails?
She's not a
See what my new hours are?
Yes. Good for you.
How do you identify a short-term rental? What's the criteria?
Anything less than 6 months.
It's what's identified in the code. How we decided to.
If there's a short-term rental that should become a long-term rental at some point in time, and then a short-term after that, how do you handle that?
Say that again.
Someone could rent their house for 9 months to somebody, 9, 10 months. And then the next renter that comes in is only there for maybe 3. And then another renter could come in and be there for 7 or 8. So is it a short-term rental or is it a long-term rental? That property.
Well, what I think is even at a 6 or 7 or 8, 6 to 9 month rental, you can still get through the winter and you can have a house for the winter, if, our workforce. But if you need to camp out for a month or two, then before you can get back into a house, have protection from those.
Well, short-term rental is defined in our code. A dwelling unit or portion thereof that is offered or provided to a guest by a short-term rental owner for a fee for fewer than 30 consecutive nights.
Basically, if it goes from long-term to short-term, if you're short-term, you have to put up a sign that identifies it as a short-term, and you have to pay for that signage.
You can put up a piece of binder paper with the information on it. You don't have to pay for it.
Oh, no, okay.
It's just you have to have a business license. That way,
Yeah.
when somebody finds a camera in your plug-in and they call the police, we'd like to know who to call.
Who owns the property?
Who owns the property?
So 313 defines a short-term rental. And 34 1341 is all the compliance issues.
So Craig, to answer your question, that was 30 days or less.
I really wasn't, where I was going with that was not necessarily what the length of time is to find a short-term rental, but the possibility that a short-term rental could also be used as a long-term rental. So, and back and forth. There's a potential for that. So I guess if it's ever a short-term rental, it's a short-term rental, as soon as you rent it for 30 days or less, you're a short-term rental, even if that's a one-time thing and then thereafter it's, 9 months or 8 months.
I would think so. I mean, we could ask James.
I think it helps people want to do at least a 6-month lease, a 1-year lease.
But I think it is people that rent it from October, that's probably too early, to May, right? And then they rent it for summer. Verbo, as they say on TV. Verbo. Drives me crazy. But I think that's it. They're still short term. Yes.
Right.
They are, those are the ones that are required to have a business license for those June, July, August, September.
It's not the time, it's what's going on, and we need to know, again, if somebody's knocking on a door or pounding on it, or what was Billings, they rented out some guy's house without him about it, and they walked in and they're like, I'm here for my vacation. He's like, I live here. We're trying to prevent those things from happening. This is the safety issues that we were trying to get to naught. And we've had them in town too, where they're like, I could have swore this was my short term, and they tried to go into somebody's house. And in Ennis, we're slow. We still maybe don't lock our doors. So when the short term rental guy is in your house at 3 a.m., we'll eventually learn. But again, it's not the same neighborhood that you look at the houses and you don't know that one of them's a business. It kind of changes your view on maybe I should lock my door, maybe I should be a little bit more aware. I mean, it could be anyway, but I do feel like maybe your neighbors should get to know that you have.
I guess I should read that. So they have to have a sign up? Yeah. Because there's one directly across from me that absolutely doesn't have a sign up.
I'm sure they haven't paid their business license either.
No, they did. Oh, they did.
And there's inspection and the count. What did the county say? They were not behind? They were
not behind.
Hey, you all, let me know if you want to hear from the town attorney on any of this.
Okay.
All right. So, Mayor Nikki, I agree with you 100% that this is an issue that has to be resolved through zoning. This is not something that you can just simply expect to take care of with, creating a business license. All right. And let's just set aside the idea of a comprehensive zoning revision for your zoning code. At present, you have the following residential zones. You have 4 residential zones. Why do I mention that? Why am I going to speak to that? Because the impact of this sort of use is mostly going to occur in your residential zones. You have 4 residential zones. Those are rural density district, rural residential low density, residential medium density, and residential town density. And they parallel mostly, but let's just consider those 4 zones as residential zones. In a residential zone, bed and breakfast, which is mostly equivalent to like the BRB, VROB, whatever Airbnb, however you want to describe these things. A bed and breakfast is prohibited except for in a residential medium density where it requires a conditional use permit. Now, what we have seen in Montana and many jurisdictions, people get around the bed and breakfast. They just don't serve them breakfast. So it's like, I'm not a bed and breakfast. I'm not prohibited. I'm an Airbnb, and you have nothing regulating an Airbnb. Now, this gets complicated further because the Montana Supreme Court has already ruled that a short-term rental or an Airbnb where you're not serving bed and breakfast, it's consistent with a residential use. But at the same time, it's a business operation, right? So now let's look at boarding and lodging homes, prohibited in an residential rural density. It's prohibited in the low density. It's a conditional use in the medium density, and it's permitted in the residential traditional density. Now, I don't know why you have 4 different residential categories, but again, that's something that goes further than this initial discussion. The fact is that you need to consider what the impacts are. Now, I looked at that draft resolution, and I'm sorry, and I'm not trying to, Corey, I know that you're very well motivated. I appreciate all that you're doing you guys don't get paid anything really. Just like a stipend, whatever. And, I know that you're all concerned about the future of the town of Ennis. And all I can do as your attorney is help guide you through that process of whatever it is that you envision for the town. My role is just to help you follow that process so that what you do and adopt is legal and sustainable. And I didn't know if somebody was speaking there because maybe I'm just speaking so loud that it's coming back through. But here's what I'm suggesting. If you find that short-term rentals are beneficial, then state why they're beneficial. Articulate that in your resolution, in your ordinance. I don't know why it's beneficial. If you decide that it's beneficial, then say why it's beneficial. Put that in writing. Then if you decide that you want to limit it to a certain degree, then you're going to have to rationalize why you're limiting it. If it's beneficial, then why is it limited to only 2%? Because I know about the origins of that Twin Bridges ordinance, and I know that it was not done with good intent. I know that it was done for the purpose of grandfathering in and creating certain monopolistic usage for certain persons that wanted to prevent other persons from being able to do the same thing. Okay. So now if you can figure out how to word that, how to rationalize that and say that it's a good thing for the town, but we want to limit it to only 2%, then, go forth and create that rationale. But understand that anything you do as a commissioners, you are legislators, and it's subject to a rational basis test. So if for some reason you were to adopt something that said only 2% can have this usage, and then somebody else comes in, challenges it, you'd have to justify as to why you limited it to 2%. If it was beneficial, how did you limit it to 2%? Okay, that's getting a bit redundant. What you guys need to do is you need to do some homework on this issue. It's a critical issue because you have to decide, like, how does this impact your neighborhood? If I'm living in, a close, densely populated residential area, and my neighbor is running an Airbnb, and I have no idea who's coming in, who's renting, next door to me, who those occupants are, maybe that's an annoyance. I don't know. Maybe I don't care. Maybe I didn't like my neighbor to begin with, and I'm like thrilled that every other week or every other month there's somebody different living there. I don't know. You have to have, that's why you have to have public hearings on all this stuff. But you have to really carefully examine it. And again, as Nikki said, the city of Bozeman, they looked at these issues. They looked at the impacts and they studied it for 3 years before they crafted their ordinance. And they wanted to make sure that that thing would be sustainable and enforceable. And trust me, there's like, once you open that city ordinance up and read through it, and you'll see all the various issues that they had to deal with. Like, what if you have like a guest house on your property? Can you rent that out? How often? Can I rent that out? And in addition to rent that out, can I rent out my primary house? Now you got two rentals going on your property. And is this occurring in a residential community or not? Are you going to require, are you going to require some responsibility and undertaking there?
Okay, sounds like at least a plan. It's gonna have to be through zoning, which, Susie said I can't do until she leaves. All right.
Oh.
We just can't.
Oh my God.
All right.
Hey, I want to know what he's eating. Are you having Chinese? Is that Chinese or is it takeout? Just unmute your microphone. Let us know. Let us know what you're having. Come on, man. Bring some down to town hall. We're starving here.
Harassing anybody online.
I haven't eaten. I haven't eaten all day. I've been preparing for this public meeting.
Okay.
Just come on.
All right.
I don't
So
know. They probably have their speakers. I'm sorry. Their speakers are turned down. Their microphone's muted. But man, I want to know what they're eating.
It's dessert. It's for sure dessert. It's making me hungry. All right. So current plan. At least identify. We need to start with identifying what we have. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And then I will send you the folder of what I've found so that we can all read it. And then maybe that at least more information gives you a broader perspective. There's a lot of how it supplies income for a different age population that can't work, so there's a ton in my 46 articles or whatever that I'll send you guys. And then what other towns and their links to their ordinance and how they did it. But most of it that I've read is zoning, like Bozeman's, very similar. Okay, that's the plan. So we're not even close to that one yet. Zoning terrifies me. Water rates. Eric left, but rural water is helping us with resolution currently. What's her name? You don't know. Bobby, that's her name, from rural water. We sent her a copy of the water report. So with what we've identified that we were going to tackle, she's writing a resolution and helping us with a plan to implement that increase over 10 years.
And it wasn't bad.
No, it was $4 basically over 10 years.
I thought it was going to be quite a bit worse.
I think you pad it a little bit in case there's more projects that you take on.
That's-
We've discovered that probably are more necessary than every month we discover they're a little more necessary than like a water report. You just don't get to see what state everything's in. We've had leak detectors down here, there, and yonder, and the more I find out about leak detection, it's not a very good science. Because, I mean, if you had valves and you could just shut valves off, then you can narrow things down pretty well. But whoever did SimCity however many years ago in the 70s for Ennis did not put those things in. So now we get to play SimCity in reverse. And yeah, leak detection is not a science. It's based on sound, which I didn't know, and now explains why that's not
Accurate.
all that
Would be
accurate.
What the heck?
I don't know how you actually do it other than if you had valves, you could section it off and gauge loss and this, that, and the other. So that's the plan there.
And that's just a bare minimum. $4 is to bring us up to where we're supposed to be.
Yeah, at the target rate.
You know, and the town's not a money making generating entity, but we do have to stay afloat with that. And that's a conversation I had with Susie earlier today, just regarding wages. There's like the 2% annual increase that is like kind of mandated that you have to do as far as like to account for inflation. But you know, when your town gets more expensive to live in by the second, you know, sometimes you do have to take stuff like that into consideration, because it's going to cost us more to have repairs done to all that stuff. So
I don't think the price of asphalt's going to get cheaper over the years.
Power, how much, the power's gone up. You gotta run those pumps. They don't run on air.
Really small municipalities don't do, I mean, like super tiny. The leak detection and the drawdowns isn't always how they do their figuring out their leaks. It's based on their power usage.
Well,
Because how much the pumps run.
There was a residential that using this way larger amount than somebody else that would investigate as to why.
What did you? Oh, well, you mean like meter reading?
Yeah. You know, if
your microphone's not on, Susie.
I know that.
But I was saying, like, the pump houses, like, you know how much they use each month, and some places that's
That's
what
right.
they do. So that's where that's at. I still want to do it kind of fall before everybody leaves. That's the thing. Like, I don't want to do public hearings when they're not here. I mean,
They're not here anyway.
yeah, so that's why the first three are the no parking, the watering restrictions, and the camping. And then snow removal could probably wait a while. They probably, you know, if you're not here for the winter, you probably don't care that much about it. You're probably not shoveling your driveway.
That's where it's supposed to
Yeah.
Yeah.
go. Oh, maybe not.
You want to inform your
Okay.
council of that.
I'll get there too. But we're still on any other proposed, and you have that for me.
Are we still gonna be approaching zoning?
Not this year. I don't have zoning in me
Zoning
this year.
what?
I thought, for some reason, I thought we were gonna get busy and, what was our plan for May and June then?
This. We have to go through all these public hearings on these for May, June. This is a little chunk of awesomeness that'll take a bit. And then remember, so if we go May, June, July on this is the plan, as much as we can get through it. August, we go into budget
Oh, yeah.
and budget work sessions, because that has to be adopted in September. And then we can do snow removal in October. No, we'll probably try to tackle it in there. It's not that complicated. And then maybe take the rest of the year off. No, I'm kidding. I think we'll just carry on with our 2 meetings every month except for December. I think that's what we managed last year. Okay. Other proposed legislation. Maria, would you like to present why this doesn't work?
Okay, we have resolution 576-2022. And it's a resolution of the town of Ennis to adopt fees pertaining to water and sewer utility accounts. The first sentence, paragraph says, whereas utility customers are considered past due if after 30 days following the due date, any portion of their bill remains unpaid. Our software cannot comply with that 30 days following the due date. We need to drop the words following the due date. So it reads, utility customers are considered past due if after 30 days, any portion of their bill remains unpaid. If it was 30 days following the due date, they're now 60 days late. And we were not able to implement any late fees until they're 60 days late. The idea here was, I believe, to be able to charge late fees after 30 days after the billing date. We've talked to the software people and they've said we can't do that. You can wait the 60 days or you can strike those words, but they can't tweak our software just for us to work with that wording.
Okay, so your recommendation was to tweak the words or strike?
To strike the words following the due date. So that would make the late fee kick in once they are 30 days.
Past the due date.
So they're due May 15th.
Actually, they're due, and that was the other thing, they couldn't make them due on the half a month. They're considered past due if after 30 days, any portion of the bill remains unpaid. You get billed on June 1st. If July 1st you haven't paid that bill, you're late.
That's the way I would interpret that if I got that in the mail.
That's smart, right?
Three Rivers bills me about the 10th. If I don't pay by the 23rd, they tack on $10. That's just their term.
So that makes sense. Strike.
So the recommendation is to strike those 4 words following the due date.
Okay. So we have to make another resolution?
Mm-hmm.
Just amend that.
Yep. Amend that resolution. So we don't have to do we have to do a public hearing?
It'll have to come before you formally. This was just to explain it.
Following the due date seems implied. Anyway, that's the way I would interpret it.
I just pay it.
All right, anything else that's on our radar?
Yeah, other than, I mean, I just want to express maybe a sentiment that I haven't said to Craig, maybe since he's newer on the council, but just with VRBOs, I guess my major sentiment that I like to express is how it just kind of takes away from your community. It's you arguably don't know who your neighbors are at some point when there gets to be a few too many of them in your community. So it is something I feel I was definitely all about, like, well, Twin Bridges just did this, let's move forward with what they had in place. But it is something you really have to be careful with, because you're altering markets. You're altering a free market for someone to be able to do what they will with their house. So that's I guess all I had to say on that. And as far as new stuff, would it be, so I don't have anything really written down other than I know the beer festival or whatever that thing that the chamber puts on.
The
Is
tap in
that
Ennis.
the tap? Thank you. Yeah, tap into Ennis. I just call it Beer Fest, but has that been everything flowing good with
They've
that?
got the map complete and waiting on insurance was the last item that I knew about when I checked Monday.
And
That event insurance is in place.
I'll double
I had
check
asked about that also.
I thought.
because the
everything
map
was done.
was the last, but okay.
is that Heather?
Heather Brunner is part of the
She
committee.
was in, and she said the insurance was the last thing for her to be able, or the event to be able to provide, because the renewal was happening between the day she was in and the day of the event. So as soon as that trigger was pulled, then she would bring that in.
Yeah.
Our renewal date is May 1st.
Yeah. So still in process. Don't actually have it in our hot little hands, is what I'm saying.
For the additional insured, is that what the little form for the additional insured?
Because it's not been renewed.
Right.
So we need the,
Okay, yeah.
it has been renewed official date thing, but
Yeah.
I cannot see any reason why that wouldn't happen. So everything else is done.
I know the insurance got paid for the chamber, so yeah, that's in place.
So in that, did each vendor, I'm just curious.
They've got it all worked out as far as I know.
I think she brought a check, or she's bringing a check, something.
Yep.
Or how does that get charged out? Is it each vendor pays?
I don't know how they're doing it, but she said she was bringing the money.
Heather's on it. We'll go with ladies in charge. We'll
Cool.
get it there.
I have something that might be, is this for the next agenda?
Not agenda, like look, I was looking at legislative stuff that we need to work on because it takes forever.
The picnic basket sold?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and she was in, and I think they have to go through the same encroachment and user agreement that the other owners did prior, because remember they had the parking spots blocked off for their seating.
Mhm.
So, that would come. Does it come to council or just you? I don't know.
Do an encroachment permit? I approve encroachments.
But that's a street.
John and I review them, and then if it's anything to do with, that's not part of DOT.
Yeah, that was her only question then.
Ask John for sure on that one.
Yeah, he said it stayed with the, he said she needs to do it.
Mhm.
Didn't sound like he was much in favor of doing it.
There was no negatives, I guess. That's just me speaking.
I just need to call her back and tell her what she needs, the process she needs to start.
I guess the question for Susie, how about the Bill Mercer sign? Is that, we just received a letter regarding that, but is that something like when I guess we're talking about?
All
Huh?
of us. All of us.
Lindsay Gordon, it's public comment.
Yeah.
Lindsay Gordon.
What
Dear
sign?
Commissioners.
The one on the
Yeah.
building on the far side? Is there one or two or? As you're leaving town, I think it's up.
It's on the south
Both
face.
sides. Okay, that's what I was thinking.
West and east side.
Okay.
So is she in favor of the signs?
No.
Oh, okay. So, in our ordinance, and I don't have the book right in front of me, but, if you have an off-premises sign, basically you have
After
2 years after 2 years, you have to apply for a variance. And, so I've been in this position just 2 years, so I waited for the time to lapse, then I let them know in advance that I would be sending a letter. I sent a
When
letter
did you get
from
that? So
client
that.
to them saying that they had, I don't remember the time, right, I think it was just basically become compliant or remove the signs. To be compliant, you have to apply for a variance, go in front of the zoning board of adjustment. So, he has an attorney, James actually is aware of it, and we were supposed to have a meeting this week. It's going to be next week instead. So we're gonna sit down, James and I, and Mr. Mercer and his attorney, and discuss it. But
Would somebody like to forward public comment to some place where it actually goes into public comment with like the clerk or the mayor so that it could be actually entered into public record?
Oh, I thought you were on it. I'll forward it to you. Did you receive the other ones about, from other business owners downtown?
Yeah, I was wondering
Asking
that
about
too.
the resort tax, asking to.
John Way and Joe Dill Schneider.
That one I got.
You got John Way and
I
Bill
just got
Schneider?
I got some of them.
There should be 4 total.
No.
I've responded back to 3 of them.
yeah, and I think it would be useful if James, if not James and myself, were have that letter, that you received, so if you wouldn't mind forwarding it to us as well, that'd be great. So, I sent out 2 letters, also the Continental Divide banners that were up, one down by the Lions Club and one that was on that orange building.
And was the Sportsman's, was that in compliance, what they had flapping around? And that went away because,
Actually,
So we
one
destroyed
was
it?
in just in bad shape. One was, and then they weren't permitted. They're allowed to have them. It wasn't permitted. So.
but they have to put in a permit to have those.
Yes.
I
And
permits for everything.
she was putting in a permit and she had it ready, said she was gonna bring it over to me that afternoon, and then she called me and said, forget it, somebody just ran over it, so. I'm taking it down. So,
Well, maybe it was a good test run that between wind and
Which one of you did that?
it was me. I'm a
Zoning
horrible backer.
enforcement
I will just say
officer
it.
Hardy.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
Okay, so there's nothing else on the ordinance part?
No.
Okay, we got amended hours for now. You saw the sign? I don't know. So we're here Monday through Thursday, Maria.
Finally, good.
Monday through Thursday, 10 to 4, no Fridays, right now.
And Ginger's ill, she's been out?
Mhm.
Oh.
So that's where we're at. So you're gonna have to bear with me because I look at her and go, I need this and I need that and I need this and I want these numbers and I want this report, and it just like magically falls into my little desk spot, my office,
Backside
and
of Ginger's desk.
which is the backside of Ginger's desk, which is kind of funny. But anyway, so things are gonna be a little bit painful for a bit. Just
I
just
offered to share my office with.
She didn't want to either.
Don't feel too bad for her.
But I would have to sit on her lap, and I didn't know if that was gonna violate any other kind of thing. All right, so we're done. You have your homework?
Yes.
Okay. I might be calling on you for different health sections.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Some short works.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. I.
Yes.
Okay.
Yo, 8:30.
Woohoo!
We're done early. Pretty much.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. Like, I don't know where that was, the question and answer thing that I had, all the questions that we came up with, I left it at home. So
No, not even. No, I mean,
those are, to speak to my comment earlier about,
Where did that number come from? Is that from that?
it is
You read where I haven't read that yet?
66% are in Madison County. Short-term
Which is 173 of the 262 in Madison County.
Yeah.
And so they must have pulled these numbers from the sanitarium, I would assume.
I cannot speak to where they came from, but yeah.
That's the hard thing about information, like where did it come from?
So even just the variance in the median housing, well, that is the Ennis. So their study shows Ennis having a median income of 55. Is that true? In ours, according to our engineer study, is 46. So it's $9,000 different on what our median income is.
That's not good because that's going to affect the.
Right, this is saying we make more.
That would totally affect the target rate. And that came out of that housing.
Mhm.
Why do you have to just rain on my parade, Corey? But that makes sense, right? Because everybody's like, oh, inflation's up 7 to 8%. We have to do that increase. I mean,
He's only got one currently, and it's registered. But that's. Yeah, they statistics are a. Three seats open and up. Coming on. Change that. I know what real estate is. Did he tell you the story? Oh, no. We go far.
Somebody, he comes flying. I know you're right. Everything's right. Everything's fine, right?
Yeah, that was just like really, and I was just like, you've got this money clip in there, and I was totally prepared. How much? Just like, whatever.
Oh, I see everybody else.
Because he had the money clip, but he's sitting there playing. Billy, peace out. It wasn't quite that. I was like, I gotta get ready. But no, it's all good. And I told him, I invited him.
They thought there was interest on that. That would have been, you know.
I invited him to come to,
I couldn't look.
May
And then
once.
I kept hearing everybody laugh. I'm like, oh, this is not good.
In, the Fairgrounds, May 6th, Saturday. No. Yeah, Galaxy Gateway. Saturday.
All right, good night, everybody.
Thanks, Ian.
Oh, it's learn how to run a lawnmower at the Lions Club.
Oh.
That's what's going on May 6th.
And Paul's gonna be teaching him how to race.
No, that'd be just me learning how to not drive into the pond. I don't know anything about design, but.
What's that?
I think it's got some pictures on it. Yeah, we're.
And I'm good.